Good morning. Last Friday, March 12, I sent a text message to Christy and David Cooper, teasing them a little bit and saying 1 year ago today, I did my Daniel dramatic presentation for the senior citizens group at First Presbyterian in Chattanooga, and then later that day, it seemed like the entire United States shut down. The ACC tournament was canceled, and schools began shuttering down, and churches and businesses began shuttering down. And I teased in the text and said, I don't think those two events are related. Me doing that performance and everything shutting down. But it was right at a year ago on March 12 that it was obvious that COVID-19 was going to have a huge impact on us. On March 17, a year ago today, I recorded the first of what I did not realize would be 365 consecutive days of First Cumberland offering spiritual content on YouTube for your benefit, for all of our benefits. And I have to tell you, it has benefited me to do this every day. It's meant that I have had to try to work even harder than normal to keep my spiritual life healthy so that I can do this every single day. It's been 365 days. And that reminds me, as a matter of fact, as I knelt to pray on Sunday morning in our prayers of the people, the passage of scripture that came to my mind was James 4, verses 13 to 15. And I want to share those with you this day. James tells us, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town and spend a year there doing business and making money. Yet you do not even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wishes, we will live and do this or that." Now let's be clear, it is not the Lord's wish or the Lord's will that viruses come and attack us. That's not part of God's ultimate will for us and for our lives. That is because we do live in a world that is still a fallen world. And so we do not say that God willed the virus upon us. However, we do recognize the truth of this passage where we do not know what tomorrow will bring. And on a very perfectly ordinary March 12, everything may shut down in ways we can't imagine. And by March 17, we may be engaging in new habits that we didn't know we would have, and we didn't know how long we would be engaging in them. And so this day, I want us to simply do a little bit of two things that are almost contradictory. I want us to lament a little bit of those things that we have lost in this last year, and I want us to celebrate the ways that God has been with us and that God has been able to use this past year. The Bible is full of lament. One of the care notes for children that I sometimes give them about grief is a care note that's title is "Sad Isn't Bad." And we need to know that not only for children but for all of us, sad isn't bad. And so let us lament a little bit. Let us lament that over 530,000 Americans have died of this disease, and then millions others around our planet. What it took 4 years for the Civil War to do in terms of deaths, we have almost hit in a year in this country due to this pandemic. It will, I suppose, be the worst pandemic to ever hit the United States of America in our relatively short history. We lament the loneliness that this disease has caused as people have had to be shuttered away, particularly in Chattanooga when the tornadoes came through and several of our nursing facilities were hit and people were dispersed all over. We lost track of some of our members, didn't know where they had gone during that time because of that. And that's caused a tremendous amount of loneliness and disconnection as grandparents have not been able to see their grandchildren. Parents have not been able to see their children. We have been disconnected from our friends and relatives as well, others of us who are younger. There's been a lot of loneliness, and we need to lament that. It's been a hard year. There's been a lot of division this year. Oftentimes when bad things happen, that brings us together and we come together in united effort. That did not happen for us. Very early perhaps, but very soon there were tremendous arguments about masks and when things should be open and not open and shut down and not shut down. And our political divisions have widened in this last year, and that is sad, and I lament that. I lament that this has been not only physically devastating for so many people, but economically devastating. And a number of people will never recover from this. Small businesses that have had to close, people who were laid off, people who got sick and did not have adequate health insurance and had the initial diagnosis perhaps covered, but did not have their long-term treatment and care covered. And they will suffer for the rest of their lives economically and perhaps physically as well. And I lament those things. I lament the fact that we haven't been able to be together and that we have struggled to figure out how best to do things. And so let us know that sad isn't bad. And we can offer all of these laments to God. We are so sad and we are so distraught at all of the things that this disease has wrought, and we offer them to God and ask God to work to bring the peace that passes all human understanding to us and to all those who have been affected. To ask that God would bring hope even into situations that for some may seem hopeless. But we also know that if sad isn't bad, neither is glad bad. And glad isn't bad even in the midst of grief, even in the midst of lament. Sometimes when we're grieving and we have a sense of joy or gladness, we may feel guilty. I ought to feel bad because I'm supposed to be in this time of grief. But gladness and joy come even in times of grief and of difficulty. And during this time in particular, I think we can recognize from Romans 8, where we are told that all things work together for good, that God works all things together for good to them that love God and work according, to God's purposes. And so we recognize that there have been a lot of good things that have happened in this last year. The old phrase, absence makes the heart grow fonder, I think is true for us. And we've discovered, as we did in that passage from James a little while ago, we don't know what tomorrow brings, and that means we must treasure today even more so. I have come to treasure this porch even more than I did before, and I have actually this last couple of days looked back over some of the videos of the last years and have just watched how behind me the grass has gone from brown to green and back to brown again, how the trees have leafed out and then lost their leaves and now they're beginning to bud out again. And I've really become to enjoy this porch and to enjoy it with you, as the majority, I think, of the videos I've recorded have been from this porch. I've also come to recognize and treasure the love that I have for friends and for family members, for folks at church. As we started to open back up, and then as more and more people have been able to get vaccinated and come back, when I see people that I haven't seen for some time, I almost always get tears in my eyes and my heart just swells with love for them, and I appreciate them more than I did before. I appreciate you more than I did before, and I'm thankful that God is helping me recognize just how valuable, how precious all of the people in my life are. I have to celebrate that in spite of the fact that our church has not been operating, you would say, at any kind of full capacity. We still aren't having Sunday school. We're not having in-person Bible studies. We're not having our normal activities. Our in-person worship services are not attended as well as they once were. In spite of all of those things, First Cumberland and so many other churches as well have an increased exposure because of what you're doing right now, watching us online. It's pretty stunning when I tell you that our statistics only from YouTube alone show that we have had over 250,000 views, 232,000 views in the last 12 months. 7,500 hours people have watched the videos that we have put online in this past 12 months. Well, that's a reach we didn't have before then, and I'm thankful to God for that. One of the things I'd like to ask you to pray about is what are we going to do going forward? I don't think we will continue to do 7 days a week of programming. It takes too much time away from the other things that we typically do, but we need to figure that out. We need to discern that, and I would covet your prayers on that. But before we even do that, we simply celebrate. We simply celebrate the good that God has wrought during this year, the way that God was able to make even the bad of coronavirus come together for good. And I invite you now to lament what you need to lament, to celebrate what you need to celebrate, and to celebrate most of all that God is with us. Amen.